Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order of the Plan Commission, June 5th, 2025. Could we please have a call to order? Or I should say, I guess we should do the pledge and then we'll do the roll call. Okay. Let's stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty. Okay, now we can have the roll call.
Commissioner Blaylock, not here. Commissioner Gratiter. Here. Commissioner Buzat, not here yet.
Not here yet.
Okay. Commissioner Marshall, not here. Commissioner Romanelli. Here. Commissioner Rothbard, not here. And Chairperson Blaylock.
I'm here. So we don't have a quorum at the moment, but Tim is caught in traffic and hopefully he will join us. And then we can vote on the approval of the minutes, which is the next item, and we will defer that until Tim gets here. Are there any visitors wishing to address the Plan Commission? No? I don't know. He says he's been in traffic 2 hours and 17 minutes and he's gone 4 miles. So, and that was half an hour ago. So I think he's really stuck. Catherine.
I have a question. Because he was not here, how could he approve the minutes? I thought you had to be
You don't have to be present.
to approve.
You don't have to be present. I mean, most people do abstain, but you don't have to. You can just vote because they look right to you, or you've watched it on the video and it reflects what you saw. So you can vote even though you weren't here.
Okay.
I don't know that he would, but we'll just defer and we'll see.
Or he could abstain.
Yes, he can abstain, but he doesn't have to if he wasn't on the Plan Commission at the time. But we'll let him make that decision when he gets here. All right, new business discussion related to updating the comprehensive plan. Director Witt, would you like to take us in?
Okay, so I understand that there is some desire to take a look at the comprehensive plan. I'm going to get into my comments perhaps after our friends from TSCA give a presentation on kind of purpose of the comprehensive plans in general, and then do some more pointed discussion toward the Riverwoods plan in itself. So with us tonight, starting on my immediate right is Michael Blue, and followed by Lee Brown, both from TSCA Associates. For those that don't know them, but I think the three of you do, but Tim would not have, but I'm going to say this anyhow. TSCA is a planning firm that has been working with the village for many years before my time and currently on other projects. And we rely on their expertise in certain areas, and this is one of them. So I'm going to turn things over to Michael. I presume you get tasked at this presentation for tonight. And then afterwards, we want to have some discussion with regard to the comp plan in total and, my thoughts as far as what we really need to accomplish. I think we would like to take this piece at a time. Some areas of it, I believe, have more need to be looked at sooner than the entire comprehensive plan as a total. But we'll get into that after TSCA is completed with their presentation tonight. I'm presuming that everybody's got a copy of the packet that was sent out, the hard copy, since we don't have it up on the screen tonight. So, Michael, if there's a way to walk us through that, or Eric, would you want to throw this up on the screen for us? Why don't we just do both? Here, I'll take over if you want to.
Just the newest one on there.
You know, let me turn the lights down a little.
Well, we can do the preliminaries while the slides are coming up. Would just say that, to echo what Steve mentioned, is that since you all are taking the opportunity to look at the comprehensive plan, it was mentioned somewhere at a meeting that, oh, it might be nice to start out by talking a little bit about comprehensive plans writ large. What are they generally? What are some of the rules of thumb? What are some of the things that get considered in them? And so we put together just a quick slideshow for Lee and I to walk you through some of these concepts. But the first thing to keep in mind is that there really is no right answer for how the plans get done. What's important to a community is what ends up in its comprehensive plan. So there are best practices and there are things to keep in mind, but is there an absolute right answer? Is there a way you have to do it? No, there's not. So there's a lot of flexibility. It's not as precise as a zoning ordinance. It's a statement of policy, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through. If you have any questions or anything strikes you, let us know, and we thought this would be a good little kind of precursor to the rest of your discussion about the comprehensive plan. But again, first thing, like I said, there's no absolutes in how it's done. And certainly, Riverwoods isn't any town, so it's not going to have just any old comprehensive plan. It's going to be custom to who it is. So that's what we want to introduce the idea of. So yeah, if you want to go back to that first slide, just a couple of the topics that we'll talk about tonight.
Next slide.
What's that? Yeah, there we go. So I always like to start with a little bit of context, and we'll talk about planning generally, and then the making of comprehensive plans, and then talk a little bit about the plan that you have, and then we can talk about it. So let's start with the next slide, first slide. Oh. There we go. So I always like to talk about a short history of planning, because it's important to know this is something that has been going on for a long time, that a lot of different places have done it. This is actually a picture from the 1909 Comprehensive Plan for the City of Chicago. Are these things still at the Art Institute? In the basement of the Art Institute, the original drawings used to be done. And for those of us who now are used to seeing things on computer, there's these beautiful hand-drawn drawings of the plan for Chicago that was, if you go to the next slide, drafted by the one and only Daniel Burnham, who's known as the father of modern planning, kind of the grandfather, technically, I guess. But he's famous for this quote about make no little plans. Kind of the modern version of that is go big or go home, which makes sense, because a comprehensive plan is a vision. It's a policy statement. It's who we are. It's what's important. And so you really aren't bound by the limits of markets and whatnot. You have to be acknowledging of them, but there's a lot of flexibility, and it's a chance to say, who are we and what do we want to be? The next slide is the last bit of Planning 101. But again, just to show you that this all goes back a very long time. You may be familiar with the Chicago World's Fair that Burnham is known to have been the lead planner for. If you read the book, The Devil in the White City, he's the one who's not the serial killer. But the idea was about the City Beautiful movement, right? How do you make a city better and prettier and more livable? And this is at a time where people were living in tenements in New York and in Chicago. And the other good read was The Jungle, that tells you why Chicago needed a plan and an idea of a City Beautiful movement. So that's what the plans are all about. They're all about making your place, making your home a better place to live. So that's kind of enough background. Let's talk about the process. And the next slide walks a little bit about what a comprehensive plan is and what's in it. So as I've already hinted, it's a statement of community values. What do residents, merchants, property owners want and expect from their community? It's a vision for the future, quite literally. Most plans have got some form of vision statement or statement of goals and objectives. The current plan's got goals and objectives about a lot of topics that are important to Riverwood, so that's perfect. It'll have insights and recommendations. It becomes the guiding policy document. And in practice, I would suggest to you that it's something that gets pulled out every year. Either the commission or the village board or staff are looking at it and saying, all right, what's on our work program this year? Right? What's important? How do we incorporate this into what we're doing, and how do we draw on the ideas in here to decide what we're doing?
I think we're required by law to tell you that the comprehensive plan is not a regulatory tool, which is to say it is a guide and does not directly control or regulate the use of property. I've done my duty.
Thank you. That's a good point. The zoning ordinance is the regulation. So what's in a comprehensive plan is what the next slide is about. And this will get to be a theme. There are no right answers. There are no absolutes. There is not legislation, as there is in some states, that says, here's what has to be in your comprehensive plan. Illinois has never gone that far, but these are things that we typically see in comprehensive plans. And these are done at a broader policy level. So let's take sustainability as an issue, because there's a new sustainability plan, right? A comprehensive plan would typically not include a sustainability plan. It would address the issues of sustainability, environment, very much like the current plan does. And one of the implementation steps of it might be to look further and develop a sustainability plan. Same thing with housing. Again, affordable housing often comes up, or how to deal with housing affordability more appropriately than affordable housing, and what to do as follow-up. And updating the affordable housing plan, which the village has also recently done, is an important part of that. So these are the topics, and I would suggest to you, these are very much all in the current plan. So the next slide talks about why would you update it, which is topical, because that's what we're talking about doing. Well, when things change, it's appropriate to change your plan. When national or even global events change, it's worth doing the plan. You know, in just the last 20 or 25 years, we've had a housing crisis, a global pandemic. I mean, these are things that just change the way the world happens. Even the current plan talks about the impact on retailing of internet shopping, for instance. Well, that number's growing, right? And so as things change, if they affect the community, it's worth updating the plan. It's always important to build on what you've already done. The plan doesn't take the old one and throw it out. I think the way that I heard reference to this plan being done is that it's an update of the current plan, which is really an effective way to do it, because the fundamental goals, the fundamental values of the village probably haven't changed a whole lot. How they get maintained, how they get implemented might technically be different, but probably hasn't. But it's you build on what's been done. You connect to other planning efforts. Again, the recent ones that the village has just been looking at have been the public lands issues and some of those things in the sustainability plan. My favorite shorthand for a comprehensive plan is it answers the question, what does the village want to see here? So when you have a development, for instance, like Walters Kluwer, which has been which has been topical. The plan needs to give some sort of guidance. Is it going to say exactly what's going to be there? No, because you can't anticipate 10, 5, even a year in advance to say, here's what it's going to be. But the plan's got a lot of direction for that. The plan emphasizes woodlands preservation. To implement that, the zoning ordinance requires woodland presentation. When a property like Walters Kluwer or Federal Life come up, the idea of how do we preserve what woodlands is front and center. So that's kind of, you go from the plan to the regulation to the development. All those ideas start with the plan. The plan didn't say when Walters Kluwer or Federal Life come up, here's what we need to do with the woodland areas. No. It emphasized their importance. It spoke to the need for how to do it. It spoke to the percentage of protection, then the code did, and then the development did. So that's really how you end up using your plan. And that's that last point about implementation. It happens with developments. It's part of how you decide how you're going to spend your budget money. And to the extent there are grants to be had, it's part of how that happens. Couple of slides about the approach. Just to keep with our theme, there's no absolute, but typically what do? You assess community conditions. Towns look at traffic counts, the markets, vacancy rates in commercial, price of housing. What are the existing conditions that are important? There is typically at some level some amount of public engagement, open houses for the community, surveys, an opportunity to go to the village website and leave a comment about the future of the community. It's important that there be some level of public engagement, because ultimately when you as a plan commission and then the village board are making decisions based on the comprehensive plan, it's important to know that it comes from the community, and this is the time to do it. Defines goals, defines opportunities. These things are well represented in the current plan. And then once those plans are made, once those statements of goals and maybe some preliminary actions are outlined, it's not a bad idea to go back to the community and say, here's what we heard you say was important. Here's how the village is going to do it. What do you think? The really good thing about doing this as part of a comprehensive planning process is you're not waiting till there's a development proposal and the room fills up with residents who are very concerned, right? You're asking without something before you as a group. It's a much more calm, deliberative way to have a conversation about the future of the village. And it gets adopted, as Lee said, it gets adopted. It's a statement of policy. It is not regulation, but like we said, woodland goes from plan to zoning to development. So it does have an impact on what ordinances might get adopted.
And I think it's interesting to look at 8, which is monitor and evaluate outcomes, as being potentially number 0, which is to say, we look at this as a circular process. In some cases, it takes 40 years to get back. We hope it doesn't. We hope that you have a much more regular evaluation of the comprehensive plan once it's adopted. But here's an opportunity, even in advance of doing a separate assessment of current conditions, is to say, how did the last plan do? What did we accomplish? Where did we miss it? Rather than starting from, we're coming up completely new, as Michael has said, we're not starting from scratch. It is worthy of evaluating the progress towards implementing the last plan and to identify the flaws if such exists.
The next slide speaks to the program sort of in a more graphic way. Not graphical? I don't think it's graphic. It sounds horrible.
Illustrative.
Illustrative, thank you. So what it shows is, again, this order in which things are done, where the process starts with an assessment of community conditions. Public engagement is in there, and when we do plans, public engagement really runs throughout the process because you never stop being open to hearing what people think. And that can be done through listening sessions or websites and that, but they're always open to that. That community workshop, that's step 3 in here, is really about that goal setting step that we talked about, having the community share ideas and setting goals. And then 4 is about plan making. Says, we've talked about what we want, but now what do we need to do? And so recommendations about doing further study, recommendations about changing city or village policies, that's where those ideas come forward. And then they all get summed up into a plan. There's no dates or timeline attached to this schedule. There's kind of little slots that used to have months on them, but it took them off because sometimes these things can go pretty quickly. They can be kind of technical if you're building on what you have and you're focusing. Sometimes they go for a long time in communities where there's a lot of concern and a lot of discussion about particular issues or particular ideas. So again, like I said, there's no rule, there's no hard and fast. That has to do with the timing as well. The next slide digs a little deeper into the questions of public participation that we talked about. It talks about who you want to involve, and the short answer is you want to be available to everybody. That's kind of a gimme, right? The other thing that's important to keep in mind about public participation is it's not just the village hearing from the public, it's the residents and businesses of the village hearing from the village. And if nothing else, hearing that the village is thoughtfully planning for the future of the community. This is kind of my favorite part of the whole public engagement thing, is we're not just listening, which is fun because we're learning. But when you do this, you'll be sharing with your fellow residents and businesses and constituents of the board that the village is doing something to protect the future. And I don't know that people always know that that's what we're doing here. And I think that's important. It also helps establish ownership so that people see their ideas in the plan, so that when they come to a meeting that's about a development or about a policy, they go, oh yeah, we talked about this as a community. And of course, the biggest issue about public participation is it's really hard to get people to come out on a beautiful summer night to talk to you about why they love Riverwoods, because they're busy being out there loving Riverwoods, and why should they come in here just to talk about it? People come out when there's a concern, when there's an issue, and so this is really hard to do. And there's a lot of best practices and a lot of, food, people always come for something for food. But it's important and hard to do. So that's probably the 2 most important things you can know about public engagement. The last couple of slides, just for the benefit of all involved, is a real quick summary of what's in the current plan and what would be updated. So in terms of the chapters, you'll think back to that slide that had the different elements on there about economic development and transportation and so on and so forth. You don't see that exact list here in that same order, but if you do what I did the other day and you kind of have the checkbox and you've got that slide and the plan, you see that it's all in there. And I think that's important for you to keep in mind as you go about updating the plan, is it's all in there, and it's talked about in an order that prioritizes what's important for the village. We would suggest to you that as a matter of, if there is something that really should be in there, it's that land use plan, that land use map that's in there. Because that's the clearest statement to the development world, for instance, about what does the village want to see here. And that helps share with everybody what's going on.
And I would add to that, Michael, which is that the land use plan isn't always a single map. It may be an overall land use plan map appended with specific area studies, which may mean that overall there isn't a whole lot of change that you're looking for, but you've got some specific sites that you spend more time and more graphic depiction of what change might look like if it occurs. We can say that there is a possibility that you would focus on Walter's Kluwer site, or focus on the potential change of Discovery, maybe, or maybe the 37 acres. All I'm saying is it isn't like you're spreading this evenly across the whole community. You may spend more time, energy, and be particularly detailed in some areas, whereas others you're much more broad in your study.
And the analysis that Lee's talking about does not require a crystal ball. You don't have to say, all right, what could possibly happen on any of these properties? What you're doing is setting up what do we want to see when it does happen? If you think back to the discussions that we had when we were talking about the plan development ordinance, we talked about what do we want to see in these developments? So it doesn't matter whether it's single family homes or townhomes or apartments or shopping centers or what. The process talked about what's important for a development, about how it's interesting, how it respects the environment, all those kinds of things. And that's very similar to what the plan does. So you don't have to predict what's going to happen. You have to be reasonable and thoughtful and know that there's going to be commercial on Milwaukee and residential elsewhere, and could be some different things on redevelopment sites like Discovery or Walters Kluwer. But there should be some rules in there about what needs to happen, and there are.
And thoughts about how we will measure success.
Right. Right, and those are to be found in there. The next slide builds on something that Lee talked about, is that land use plan. And we've put up here the land use plan and the zoning ordinance and the zoning map, just for the reminder that these are different. These are not the same thing. There are towns where the zoning map is the land use plan, but that's because they don't have a land use plan. We have one here, and it sets up these broad distinctions, as we've talked about, with the commercial being focused on Milwaukee and the current office uses being focused on Lake Cook Road, and the rest of the community being that pale yellow and green, which again is a character reflective of those words that were up on the previous slides about open space and environment and sustainability. So the plan is not just about these technical or specific themes, it's about the themes and the consistent items that run through them. And again, the current plan does it really well. The next slide also reflects the point that Lee had. So these are the graphics that are in the current plan. It talks about natural plant communities, green infrastructure, and the woodlands delineations. So these are not land use maps, but these are the maps that are, if you will, the next layer of planning and thinking and goals and desires beyond land use. And again, these maps, in particular, the woodland delineation map, is part of every development that happens here. So last couple of slides talk about what else might be part of the plan that you're going to update. Obviously, the sustainability plan needs to be incorporated into it. It's a statement of village policy. The public land study that was just done by the village board committee is also something that would be appropriate to be part of this. There's a stormwater study. There's the new plan development ordinance that has been adopted that should be referenced to create that connection between somebody's doing a plan development and the comprehensive plan. So these are some of the other things that go into it, go into a comprehensive plan and are ripe here in Riverwoods as you update it. Last but not least, the next slide talks about plan implementation. How do plans get implemented? Planners always tell you it makes us cry if somebody updates a plan, it just sits on a shelf and collects dust. We don't want that to happen. And we'll go back to the previous notion that there are generally 3 ways that plans get implemented. The first is at budget time, because a village budget is the ultimate policy document, because the village is literally putting its money where its mouth is, right? What's important? How are we going to spend taxpayers' money? The other way is when a development comes before you, and we've talked about that one. And the other one is using the plan to identify sources of funds like grants, because we all know that the best money to spend is somebody else's. So when grants are an opportunity, the plan is important because folks that are giving grants, they want to know that the people that are being granted the money have got a bigger idea and are looking to make value out of the grants that they get. And a plan is one way that you do that. And these are some other things that happen. Obviously, regulations flow from that flow from the plan and other policy documents. When we write zoning codes, when you all worked on the plan development ordinance, it was all about implementing the policies that were in the comprehensive plan and elsewhere. And how do you deal with business areas? What do you do in terms of enhancing neighborhoods or in preserving the character of neighborhoods? All these things are about implementation, and the plan becomes the document that supports that is the collection of those ideas that make the vision.
I would suggest to you that one of the hardest things that you're likely to encounter as part of this process is recognizing several time horizons. And that, I mean, the planning horizon isn't simply 20 years because someone said you ought to have a comprehensive plan that covers 20 years. There are near-term potential impacts. There's sort of medium-term impacts that are more than 5 years out. And then there's long-term, which is to really think and be able to imagine the community in 40 years or 100 years, something much broader than the near-term focus. And I will suggest to you that it's going to take some reminders through this process that you have to keep your eye on all of those horizons.
So that's what we had. We just wanted to share some context, some ideas about what plans are elsewhere and how it relates to the plan that you have and the updates you're going to start. And we know you're going to discuss how to do it, and we're glad to be here and be part of that discussion. So thank you.
Okay, so since I see that Tim has entered the building, Elvis is here. I guess I'd look for any questions for either Michael or Lee to kind of give Tim a minute or two to settle in and come to the table before we go further.
I have a very general question, which is how does our plan look compared to other municipalities?
Different. Typically, the plans that we do follow kind of that generic structure that's up there. So there's a chapter on the introduction, there's a history chapter, then there's a section on demographics, and there's a section on the community engagement that was part of it, and then land use and housing and transportation and sustainability. They get all those chapters. And so I would tell you that what I found reading through the Villages plan again is it's all mixed in a little more. It's a little more holistic as it's written. It's not the 9 different chapters that focus very much on each of those topics that we had up there. They kind of overlap.
I actually think that it does a pretty good job in trying to recognize the interrelatedness of things. Some of the worst plans are siloed. There's this one chapter on housing. There's this one chapter on public infrastructure. There's this one chapter on transportation, and they don't really give you the opportunity of seeing the interrelationship on a choice made in this chapter and how it affects this one over here. I think your plan does a better job at keeping a bigger picture and recognizing the interrelationships. The other thing I would say is that generally the existing plan recognizes the state of the art when it was created. More recently, we're seeing much more graphics and photographs and character giving elements to try to bring a reader through the document in less words and more depictions, if you will. And we're even seeing some communities that have adopted the notion that their plan lives on the website and doesn't need to be a paper document.
Are there any other general questions or specific questions? Not at this time, but we will.
I
I think absent a few things that we need to add to this plan or that we have to change, it's a good document. It really is. I enjoyed reading it. It had been a while since I sat and read it cover to cover, as it were. It says what we need to say. There are some things that have changed in the village that we're going to have this plan reflect. But the majority of it was well written. And I didn't write it.
I was going to say, if we do say so ourselves, because you and I were both on the Plan Commission at the time. I think that in particular, the page that says other plans and policies, which has the 4 items, the sustainability plan, stormwater study, land use study, and the plan development are really the key things that we'll probably focus on as we update.
And there were a couple of other things. There are references in this plan to the kind of housing that we have in the village, and those have to be altered and widened a little bit with the new ordinance that we have on development. Actually, the land use plan that shows Wolters Kluwer's as nothing but commercial shouldn't be that way anymore. As I read through it, there were a couple things, not a lot, but there were things that need to be brought up to speed. And I think there is a dearth of information about sustainability, and that one, I think of all of them, was the one that I found most lacking in the direction that we are taking with the village, or that we're attempting to take.
I agree, having worked on the sustainability plan. It needs updating a lot. Any other initial thoughts? Welcome, Tim. No, it's no problem. The traffic is crazy. All right, so next steps.
All right, so I think whatever I'm going to say is just going to end up echoing certain things that both Lee and Michael have said, and Lori and Sherry as well. You know, when I looked at this notion of working on the comp plan, there were really 2 directions that I see that the commission can go. One to be to take this plan and go page by page and do a total revamp of it and add certain information. But the direction that I would prefer to see this go, but it's really for the commission to make that decision, is to look at doing an amendment to the plan instead of doing a total overhaul to it. We do have the 4 areas that Lori had indicated before, both the sustainability, the stormwater, land use, and I forget the 4th, but the other one that I wanted to make sure that got added was what Sherry was talking about, is particularly our efforts in affordable housing. So when Michael was talking about when things change, it's time to change the plan. Collectively, different committees have taken a lot of strides in these 4 major areas. And I think that it's time to get these into the plan, particularly considering the fact that we're trying to move forward, or potentially moving forward, I should say, with a development for the Wolters Kluwer site. Now, we're going to be meeting with the developer next week. That is no guarantee that the project would move forward, but they're starting to get the concept that the village is looking for things to happen that are listed within the plan development ordinance. They totally missed the boat the first time through. The last submittal that we got 2 days ago, or actually yesterday, is a step in the right direction. It's still not where we need to go, but we will meet with them next Tuesday to see what the potential for that is. That project would have to go to village board for a recommendation to go to plan commission, and at that point in time, you know, you as a commission will end up working with them and picking it apart to see how well it actually conforms to the plan development ordinance. So that's, in my mind, an impetus to moving forward with just doing the shorter term need of getting these particular topics into the plan, or at least having discussions so that we know that when we are to a point where it comes to the Plan Commission, since some of the members of, since you're going to be looking at this, better to have these discussions up front than after they walk through the door and present you something. So after all of that is said and done, I think the other part that Lee discussed is monitoring the whole situation. I think that needs to be done now and then. In light of these topics that we're looking at doing an amendment to, it would behoove us to take a look at the current plan and see, in the last 6 years, how has the comprehensive plan actually been addressing these issues? And perhaps how have our developers actually been responding to all of that as well? So once that's done, we'll certainly take a step backwards and review these again sometime down the road as we're redeveloping the full plan, which is what I would see happen after we get these amendments done. So, as an example, the comprehensive plan talks about a couple of things. The 20% rule for woodlands, it's in there. It's in the comprehensive plan, but that's not the regulatory language that goes into the village code. Similarly, as part of this stormwater study that we have done, we're kind of steering that whole study in a different direction in lieu of looking at it from an engineering perspective on taking engineering answers to floodwater situations. We're looking at more how can we naturally control the water by developing better our wetland areas that they can actually accommodate the stormwater as it comes through by some method of enhancement, perhaps dry well systems to retain the water on a property and help refeed not only the wetlands but the aquifer, and look at that as part of sustainability. So now we start having all of these different committees that were standalone issues, stormwater sustainability, starting to look at each other as well as the comp plan. So we have this whole thing coming together, and that's what we want to really look at, how each of these studies works with each other. And that's what I really think that the comp plan is really intended to do. Take a look at all the social issues that we have and give us a guiding light as far as where we want to go. So with that in mind, I'd really throw it back to the commission as far as how you would want to, tackle that. If you're still in a mode of, a full review, or look at this as independent amendments. And if you did it as independent amendments, do you tackle them, a topic at a time? I would leave that up to you because, a bulk of the work would be with you, obviously with my support and input, and certainly Teska's here to give us input through the process. But really, this is your project, and I'd just like to hear what direction you want to go.
First of all, I think we have to do both. And I think we have to do both as a page by page on what we have here, because I have notations on a couple of pages that have things in them that need to be eliminated or changed because they were written without any consideration of the potential of multifamily housing, and they specifically say, and that it's a single family community, and that may not any longer apply. So I think we have to go through the plan. I love the way the plan reads, and I think that the majority of what's in here should stand the way that it is. But I think we have to be aware of what has changed and what in this plan doesn't allow for those changes first. Then if we want to do anything else, add sustainability, add flood control, add whatever it is that we need to add, woodland protection, something further, then we can do that as an amendment, and I have no problem with that. I don't know about anybody else, but I don't. But I think before we do that, we have to go through this plan and make sure that there are things here that are not going to stand in opposition to what we want to do with the amendments. They just don't need to be here. and I've got a couple of them noted that I've already put down, that just need to be dropped. They just don't belong anymore. They don't fit. One of them is the zoning map, very frankly, and the land use map, which have to be altered.
And the zoning map needs an update. The
Yes.
land use map has been updated as part of the affordable housing efforts. So there's an awful lot of properties that were vacant, which no longer are. And I think that's something that certainly can be updated to see what the opportunities for development within the village are. But we should also look at that in conjunction with the results from the land use study and see how all of that blends in. So that's taken care of, and we have updated the plans with regard to the village-owned properties. And again, that's part of the land use study that there was an outcome
But
of
we've
that as
not
well.
updated them with Walters Kluwer or with Discover, which I don't believe is going to leave, but.
Well, we
heaven
haven't
only knows what's
done
gonna
those
happen in the
because we don't
future.
have a change yet.
Mhm.
So really, the plan should, in my belief, the plan should be reflective. The plan could be reflective of the existing conditions, but it should also recognize the fact that, we do have this plan development overlay that can be applied to that. So the underlying zoning there is still residential, but you have the ability for the ordinance to be put into effect on that area. So does that really mean that we need to change the plan for those two properties? I don't think so as far as the map goes, because I believe that should already be
Let's take a look at what I marked
in there
here.
somewhere.
Okay, and objectives. It was work with Walters Kluwer in designating wetland and woodland areas to be protected and made accessible from the village campus, but it doesn't allow for anything else, if you're talking about Walters Kluwer's.
Well,
And
what
I
I'm
don't know
getting
that
at
it
is,
has to.
what I'm getting at is the zoning map indicates what the current zoning
Yeah,
is.
but this is specifically in the plan,
Okay.
and there were a couple of them like that. They're not major, but they need to be addressed before we do either a change in the plan or we do amendments to the plan. We need to know what's going on with the actual plan. Another one was on page 27, if I'm not mistaken. And it was number 3 on page 27. And I read this complimentary. What happened to page 27? I think I lost it.
I don't have a page 27.
That's right. Where,
27 is a map.
yeah, and then, so I'm in the wrong page here. There were a couple of them that are not, I mean, none of them were major. Obviously, I wrote down the wrong page number because I was sitting at my desk and trying to get through all of them. But there are a couple like that that just need tweaking. This is not major stuff.
Well, it would help if each of the commissioners, when you have an opportunity to really dive into the plan, I don't know if you had an opportunity before tonight, to just jot those down and forward them off, and then we can collectively have a list to see what we're working on.
That's what I would recommend, is that the commissioners read, if they haven't already read, or reread the comprehensive plan and
Make notes.
make notes. I'm in particular going to look at it from the sustainability perspective, because sustainability is so interrelated with everything that I don't know if it would be a subchapter or just integrate lots of different arms into each chapter. I don't know how the best way is to handle it. I want to think about that. So, but that's the kind of thing we should do is read it and see what you think might change, or where it may be weak, or where something hasn't worked.
First, my apologies for being late. I think my 3-hour, 48-minute commute sets a new record. I went through in great detail reading all of this and have lots of notes. I think the plan itself is extremely strong as it stands and is something great to build on. I think amendments are probably the first step in all of this, but I like to think of it as amended and restated, where there has to be, there's, when you change something over here, it changes something over here. And the sustainability plan will find itself through all the pieces. But I don't think we need to start with changing words on every page. And I think it's more of attacking the big topics that we need to tackle. And then we'll all have little nits and gnats things that we think are important in other sections, and we make sure that those are discussed. But in the end, you've got a document that isn't referring to, in page 4, saying, go over here to this amendment to read. I find those types of documents to be ineffective in just getting to the gist of things, is my initial reaction. But
Also, we should talk about whether how we want to have public involvement, stakeholder involvement, not just residents, but businesses and foundations and everything else. So that's another element that we'll want to incorporate. Any other thoughts?
Well, one of the big things I thought as I was reading through it, and it's referred to in a lot of places, but the education of the community, I think, is where a lot of the challenges come, because we've got some very strong rules, and people either ignore them or they are ignorant of it. And trying to figure out how we educate the community is part of what I think for this, especially in like the Woodlands situations and stuff. I think there's ignorance. People move in and they're used to what they do, and they don't even think about calling the village hall to talk about it. They just think they have certain rights. And how we incorporate the education of all of the things that we're going to try to accomplish through this, I think, is going to be an important part of it, which is part of reaching out to the community, obviously. But the people who show up are the ones who care, the ones who, right? So.
And again, that goes back to sustainability, because a large portion of what is in the sustainability plan is education, not just environmental, but land use and the whole big picture. So that will be a big part of what we discuss. Okay, so let's take that as our assignment for the next meeting, which we are scheduled for July the 3rd. I don't know if that will change or not with the holiday. We'll have to, we may have to change that date, but we'll get to that.
I might ask, just so that we can plan ahead, if we can reach out to each of the commissioners just to see what their availability for that day would be. It's certainly going to be a weekend. People will probably want to do an extended weekend on. And if we have to move the date, it's easier to do it sooner than later. So if the commissioners could, give you and or me what their availability would be, that would be great. We can send out an email to those that aren't here tonight.
Okay, that's fair. Very good. All right, so for the next meeting, whenever that may be, let's go ahead and review the comp plan, come up with any questions, thoughts about where new programs that are left out may be incorporated, what may be deleted, what has not worked. Just look at it with fresh eyes and we'll see where we are.
I do have one question, because something piggyback on what Tim had said about doing an amendment to the plan. And is that how you saw the amendments, where there would be, another page where you'd have to reference the amendment, or would it be right in there? Because I agree with Tim, having people, it's back and forth is not as good.
It certainly makes the most sense, in my opinion, to be incorporated into the chapters we have. So when I talk amendment, I'm talking about incorporating the concepts into the plan in lieu of starting a comp plan from absolute square one. That's where I'm coming from. So I see it in that vein. And just to be a little more clear to the homework assignment, Lori's asking for everyone to look at the comp plan for additions, deletions, modifications, but I would suggest you look at it in at least two different ways. One, with regard to what's changed over the last 6 years that might need to be amended one way or the other. And then these additional topics that we're talking about to see what areas you think certain things could fit into to make the transition to this new information as smooth as possible. So there's, I think, two different topics we have to look at: where we've been, where we are, and what we want to add to it.
Do you have a preference as to how we communicate? I mean, I'm used to going through a Word document and adding comments or do you want just a short memo? I'm happy to adapt. You're going to have to digest all this stuff, so you shouldn't have to necessarily do this 6 different, so I don't know how many we are, but there's a bunch of us, so.
Well, everybody's got their own level of expertise with technology. Yeah, I think it's very easy to do a markup, a red line markup to the document. I don't recall if we sent out the comp plan as a PDF or if we have a Word version. I could send out a Word version to everybody, and if you're adept to just typing things in and putting comments in the column or striking things and adding your comments, that's fine. For me, that helps hone in on exactly where you're looking. For those that aren't, that well-versed with doing that, just a written bullet points would be fine as well too. Just give me a page, paragraph, and here's my concept. Or if it's just the concept, and we'll figure out where to put it. Because I think that the next meeting, we should be looking at what are the collective comments. So if I can get these comments within the next, say, 3 weeks, to try to give you some time to do it, then we would want to condense that into one page of all different comments, and then we'll sit and go through those and see, do we add this, do we not add it, and where should it go type of deal, and what kind of information do we need to really support that? Are we talking new diagrams? Are we talking public opinion? Do we need to get expert staff, either be through planning or the ecologist or, the engineers? All of that stuff needs to be vetted out. So right at the moment, we're trying to figure out what are the concepts that we're trying to incorporate and roughly where in this document those things might go.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with however you can convey that to me.
Okay, a Word document for me personally would be useful, and I don't think I'll start redlining as much as just saying, this made me think of this, right?
But it may help you down the road somewhere within the next couple of months. It's going to be probably valuable to you. So I'll get a Word doc the best we can to convert it.
Yeah.
I'm not guaranteeing that PDF the conversion is going to work well, because one in our audience would be able to say how badly my PDF version transferred a PDF to a PDF. There were probably 20 areas where letters were just disappeared, and
oh, wow.
I'm not planning to go through and read every page to make sure the conversion works. So take that with a grain of salt, but I'd be glad to convert and get you what we get.
Well, I can work from a PDF actually and just handwrite my notes in, and
however I can. Well, I think you have it already as PDF.
Yeah.
So I'll just get you the Word. I'll just shoot the Word version to everybody, and then however you want to do it is fine. Whether it's a markup and a scan, that's fine. If you want to bullet points in an email, that's fine too.
I found myself having, small word changes, but that's not what I'm trying to communicate right now. Been conceptual. And then there were also things where I said, I got to learn more about what this means and how this fits. I don't have enough understanding. So I'll just flag those too, but there's a personal education that I need help with, as well as just saying that there's things that we are.
Feel free to contact me. Just make sure that we're not copying all on everything. I don't think we're to a point where we're looking to wordsmith anything.
Right.
So, if there's an issue with a phrase that, we need to rethink something, fine. We don't have to figure out the wording at this point. We're trying to get the ideas gathered so that we can talk about the ideas.
Lee, did you have a comment?
Well, Steve just used some words that I was going to use, which is that it would surprise me if this doesn't take you at least 6 months to get through. And if you start in the wordsmithing pose, you're going to triple your time.
It'll keep changing.
Yeah, you're trying at this first go round to talk about issues. And
think it's very
that may
early.
be easier to do with notes on a PDF than it is if you get into the wordsmithing of a Word doc. You may find yourself getting too detailed too quickly.
That said, the benefit of doing perhaps what you might be used to, Tim, is just putting your narrative in the column in the Word doc, because the notes on the side.
Yeah,
That
that's what I
itself
was-
might be easier for you. And if that works, fine. That way you're not sitting there scribbling, half a page or whatever your notes are. So again, whatever you're comfortable with, we'll work it out.
And that's going to help your review as a group as well. If you've got a section or a chapter, and then there's these 10 comments that say, hey, what about this? Or we should look at that. Then you as a group, when you're going through it, you can make those decisions at kind of the broader level before you start diving into words and sentences.
Okay. So let's not get into the granular at this point. We're looking at the bigger picture.
Okay, sounds like a plan.
Okay.
A plan for the plan.
Very comprehensive.
Yes, comprehensive plan for our comprehensive plan. All right, anything else on this subject?
The sustainability conclusions, I've listened to some of the board meetings and some of the presentations, but is there a document I can review that is it posted on the website? I haven't read it yet. I want to.
It's a draft document, has not yet formally been approved.
Okay.
I don't know how or where or when it would be formally approved, but it's a draft document for discussion.
Okay.
It's available. It may be available on the website. If not, I can certainly get it to you.
That would be helpful,
Yeah.
especially since I kept writing that, sustainability as I was going
Right.
through.
In fact, maybe I'll just send it around to all the commissioners since I have the document. Okay. Next topic, old business, there's none. Staff report. Director Witt.
Certainly, just a few things. For those of you that drive by the Federal Life site, it's looking more like it's empty at this point. Both the building, obviously, and the reservoir have been removed. The contractor actually did a more dramatic leveling of the huge mounds. We went from probably 12 to 15-foot cliffs to some very sloping things, so it looks more like a rolling meadow at this point without any grass, but that will soon be seeded with oats now that they got the additional soil erosion control in as of today. So my guess is within the next week, we're done with that portion of the project. The next thing that happens is our consulting engineer is going to do a flyby with their drone to do the topographic survey of the site so that they can then decide how much cut and fill we need to do in order to get the site, particularly the entry drive and the fire district building pad, to the level they need to be, and compare that to how much material we need to dig out of the existing basin and create the new basin. So things are moving. You're probably not going to see much happen there for several months while they finish up those drawings. There's still some last minute coordination with the county that's got to occur with regard to the amount of detention that the county needs. You will see that site green up within the next 2 to 3 weeks, I would imagine. But other than that, it's just going to sit for a while. And then once we grade it, we'll just bulldoze over all of the new things that we've planted, and the project will move forward. Walters Kluwer, as I indicated before, we're working with Cy Taxman and his group on a second round look-see of proposed development for that site. The first go-around was 141 units in, I think it was 41, 42 triple townhouses. They've since reduced that to less than 45 duplexes. I don't recall the exact count today, since we just got the latest proposal in yesterday. But it is under 90 units, the best I remember. So we'll have something better to report for next month. And then the last piece that we've got going, which is something that's just cropped up within the last week, we have a request to annex the Antique Barn site where the Linford Winery is. We'll be meeting with the potential developer, or perhaps the realtor, actually, next week. And again, we'll have some better information for you at that after that. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions for Director Witt? Thank you again. Comments by the chairman. The only thing I want to say is welcome to Tim Buzzard. Did I pronounce your name? Buzzard?
Yeah, that's better than
Buzzard.
but I respond to everything.
Our new commissioner, our newest commissioner. We're glad to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Adjournment. Well, I will send a note around to see what people's availability are around the 3rd. And if that doesn't work for people, what might work maybe the week after that.
Keep in mind, you'll have to fight for that one because Sherry Graditor has got her zoning board meeting the following Thursday. So
The following Thursday?
So we'll figure out a date,
Okay.
what day of the week it might be. It's certain, I don't think it'll be a Thursday, but we'll figure something out.
Okay. Sounds good. Any other comments or questions by commissioners or anybody in the audience? If not, I was going to go back to the minutes. I think since we have a new member and somebody who wasn't present at that earlier meeting, perhaps I'll defer the minutes to our next meeting when a quorum is here. So if that's okay with everybody, that's what I will do. Okay, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Any opposed? All right.